$42 million secret. Why I signed her divorce papers with a smile. I never trusted things I couldn't take apart and put back together. That's why I loved engines. You pull the head off a V8, and right there in front of you is the truth. Worn rings, cracked gaskets, carbon buildup. An engine doesn't lie to you. It doesn't smile while hiding $40,000 of your money. It just sits there, honest in its brokenness, waiting for someone who gives enough of a damn to fix it. My name is Frank. I'm 58 years old, and I've been elbow deep in transmissions since I was 16. The shop I work in smells like motor oil, old leather, and decades of cigarette smoke that no amount of ventilation ever quite cleared out. The concrete floor has stains that probably contain half the periodic table. The walls are covered with centerfolds from the 70s, back when calendars came from part suppliers and nobody thought twice about it. There's a radio in the corner that only gets AM stations, and it's been playing the same classic rock rotation since Reagan was in office. That Tuesday started like any other. I had a 73 Dodge Charger up on the lift, and the owner wanted me to rebuild the carburetor. Beautiful car. Damn shame what time does to these machines. The owner bought it in an estate sale, probably from some guy's widow who just wanted it gone, didn't know what she had. Story as old as Detroit itself. I was torquing down the intake manifold when my phone buzzed. Linda, my wife of 22 years. Coming home late. Don't wait up. 6 words. That was it. No explanation, no apology. 6 words that landed in my gut like a wrench dropped from a ladder. But here's the thing about being married that long. You develop a sense. Like when an engine starts running rough before it throws a code. You feel it before you can prove it. I wiped my hands on a rag that was probably dirtier than my hands and stared at that text. The Charger's engine gleamed under the work light. Every bolt in its proper place. Every gasket seated perfect. Honest work. Clean work. I finished up around 7 and headed home. We lived in a ranch-style house about 15 minutes from the shop. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a mortgage that would be paid off in 4 years. The yard needed mowing. It always needed mowing. Linda used to nag me about it every weekend, but lately she'd stopped. I should have noticed that sooner. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Her car wasn't there, which wasn't surprising given the text. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table. That's when I noticed her laptop was open. She usually closed it. Always closed it. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'd be lying if I said I felt guilty about it either. I moved the mouse. The screen lit up. She'd been looking at apartments. 1-bedroom places downtown, the kind with exposed brick and monthly rents higher than our mortgage. Places for 1 person. Or maybe 2 people who weren't married to other people. There was a browser tab open to her bank account. Our joint account, the one we'd had since we got married, was sitting at $12,000. But this was different. A separate account. In her name only. The balance was $41,316. My hands went cold. Not angry cold. Just cold. Like when you're working outside in January and you forget your gloves and your fingers stop working right. I sat there staring at that number, doing the math in my head. 6 months ago, Linda told me her mother was sick. Said she needed money for treatment. Experimental stuff that insurance wouldn't cover. I cleaned out our savings. $40,000. Every penny we put away for retirement, for emergencies, for the life we were supposed to build together. Her mother had been dead for 3 years. I closed the laptop, finished my beer, started another one. The kitchen clock ticked, loud enough to count. Our wedding photo hung on the wall near the refrigerator. Both of us younger, both of us smiling like we meant it. I wondered when exactly we'd stopped meaning it, or if she ever had. Linda came home around 11. I heard her car in the driveway, heard her heels on the walkway. She'd been wearing heels a lot lately. She opened the door and jumped a little when she saw me sitting there in the dark. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, just tired. She said she'd grabbed dinner with some friends from work. Said it ran late. Her voice was smooth. Practiced. She was good at this. I wondered how long she'd been good at this. I asked her how her day was. She said it was fine. Long. She was tired, too. We were both so tired. She went to shower. I heard the water running. Heard her singing something I didn't recognize. Something new. When she came out, she kissed me on the forehead like I was her grandfather and went to bed. I stayed at the table until the beer was gone, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the street outside. An engine tells you when it's done. There's a sound it makes, a feeling, metal fatigue, compression loss, the end of useful life. Sitting there in my kitchen, listening to my wife breathe in the next room, I realized our marriage had that sound. Had it for a while now. I just hadn't wanted to hear it. Thursday morning, I stopped at the Gas and Go on Route 47 like I always did. Same station, same pump, same coffee that tasted like it was brewed during the previous administration. The kid behind the counter was new. Couldn't have been more than 19. Still had that look like the world hadn't gotten around to disappointing him yet. I grabbed my usual. Large coffee, black, and a lottery ticket. Mega Millions. Same numbers I'd been playing for 15 years. Birth dates, mostly. Linda's birthday. Our anniversary. My old man's birthday before he died. Numbers that used to mean something. The kid rang me up and asked if I felt lucky. I told him no. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't joking. I never felt lucky. I bought those tickets the same way I brush my teeth or check the oil in my truck. Routine. Something to do. $1 and a dream. They say, except I'd stopped dreaming somewhere around the second mortgage refinance. I drove to shop and worked on a Ford Mustang that needed a clutch replacement. The owner was a young guy, maybe 30, who talked about his girlfriend and their plans to drive to California next summer. He was excited, hopeful. I remembered being that age, having those plans. Linda and I were going to see the Grand Canyon. We never made it. There was always something. Work, bills, life. The ticket sat in my wallet all day. I didn't think about it. I thought about Linda and her secret bank account. I thought about $40,000 and a mother who'd been dead for 3 years. I thought about apartments with exposed brick and who might be living there with her. I didn't think about 6 numbers on a piece of paper that probably weren't worth the dollar I paid for them. That night, I stayed late at the shop. Told Linda I had a transmission job that needed finishing. She didn't ask questions. She never asked questions anymore. That should have told me everything I needed to know. The shop was quiet after hours. Just me and the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and the smell of decades soaked into the concrete. I like it that way. No phones ringing. No customers asking when their car would be ready. Just the honest work of metal and grease, and the satisfaction of making something broken work again. I was under a Chevy Silverado, draining the transmission fluid, when I remembered the lottery ticket. The drawing was at 11. It was 11:47 according to my phone. I almost didn't check. Almost threw the ticket away like I had 100 times before. But I was under a truck, my back was aching, and I needed a reason to take a break. I rolled out from under the Silverado and walked to my workbench. The ticket was in my wallet, bent and stained with a little coffee from this morning. I pulled up the lottery website on my phone. The winning numbers were right there at the top of the page. 4, 17, 23, 31, 42, 51. I looked at my ticket. 4, 17, 23, 31, 42, 51. I checked again. Then I checked a third time. Then I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face and checked a fourth time. The numbers didn't change. My ticket didn't change. The website didn't change. Jackpot, $42 million. Winner, 1 ticket sold in this state. Sold at Gas and Go, Route 47. I sat down on the floor, not because I was excited, not because I was happy. I sat down because my legs stopped working. My hands were shaking, not from joy, from fear. $42 million. And I was still married to Linda. In this state, anything acquired during marriage is community property. 50-50 split, no questions asked. It doesn't matter whose name is on the ticket. Doesn't matter who bought it. If you're married when you win, your spouse gets half. That's the law. That's how it works. Linda had $40,000 of my money hidden in a secret account. She was looking at apartments. She was planning a life without me. And if she found out about this ticket right now, tonight, she'd get $21 million and disappear with whoever she'd been seeing. I'd spend the next 20 years fixing other people's cars while she lived in some downtown loft, drinking wine I'd paid for, laughing about the dumb mechanic she'd been smart enough to leave. I looked at the ticket in my hand. It was dated July 4th, Independence Day. There was something darkly funny about that, but I wasn't laughing. I was thinking. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was really thinking. The shop was quiet. Just the buzz of the lights and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. I stood up and walked to my toolbox, pulled out my phone, found a name I hadn't called in 6 months. Saul picked up on the third ring. He sounded tired. It was almost midnight. He asked what was wrong. I told him I needed his help, told him I needed to hide something, told him I needed silence. There was a pause. Saul was a good lawyer. Better than good. We'd gone to high school together, back when the world was smaller and life was simpler. He got me out of a bad contract with a crooked shop owner 10 years ago. He was the kind of friend who asked how much trouble you were in before he asked what you'd done. He asked if this was about Linda. I told him yes. He asked if I was safe. I told him I was fine. Just needed to think. Needed time. He said to come by his office tomorrow. Said we'd figure it out. Said not to do anything stupid. I thanked him and hung up. Stood there in the shop, holding a $42 million lottery ticket. Surrounded by cars I'd never owned and tools I'd spent a lifetime mastering. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Life went on, same as it always had, except nothing was the same anymore. I walked to my workbench and found an old grease can. Empty, hadn't been used in years. The kind of can Linda would never touch, would never look at, would probably throw away if she ever decided to clean my shop, which she never would. I folded the ticket carefully, put it inside a plastic sandwich bag I'd saved from lunch, and dropped it into the can. Then I put the lid on tight. I turned off the lights, locked the shop, drove home in the dark with the radio off, and my mind running through scenarios like a mechanic diagnosing a misfire. Every possibility, every angle, every way this could go wrong. Linda was asleep when I got home, or pretending to be. I couldn't tell anymore. Maybe I never could. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, and thought about numbers. 6 numbers on a ticket. 40,000 in a secret account. 22 years of marriage. 4 years left on a mortgage. One choice that would change everything. An engine tells you when it's done. Our marriage had been telling me for months. I just hadn't been listening. But now I was. Saul's office smelled like old books and expensive coffee. The kind of place where people signed their lives away in triplicate, while classical music played softly in the background. He listened to everything I told him without interrupting. The lottery ticket, Linda's secret account, the $40,000, and the dead mother who apparently needed experimental treatment from beyond the grave. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long time. Then he told me about trusts, anonymous trusts, the kind where your name never appears on public records, the kind where a lottery commission writes the check to a legal entity, not to Frank the mechanic, who still had grease under his fingernails from yesterday's oil change. He said it would take time, said I needed to stay quiet, said the most important thing was the date on that ticket versus the date my marriage legally ended. I asked him what he meant. He explained it like this. In our state, everything acquired during marriage is community property. 50-50, no exceptions, unless you can prove it was separate property. And separate property has one main requirement. It has to be acquired before the marriage or after the legal separation date, not the divorce date, the separation date, the moment when the court recognizes that you stopped being a married couple and started being two people who just hadn't finished the paperwork yet. The ticket was dated July 4th. If my legal separation date was July 5th or later, Linda owned half of $42 million. If the separation date was July 3rd or earlier, the ticket was mine, all mine. Saul asked if Linda had mentioned divorce. I told him not yet, but she would. People don't hide $40,000 and look at one-bedroom apartments because they want to work on the marriage. He told me to wait. Let her make the first move. Let her show her cards. And whatever I did, don't tell her about the ticket. I went back to work. Changed oil. Rotated tires. Rebuilt a carburetor on a '68 Camaro that deserved better than the owner had. Kept my head down and my mouth shut. Came home every night to a house that felt like a museum. Everything in its place. Nothing alive. Linda and I move around each other like planets in different orbits. She'd be on her phone when I walked in. I'd be in the garage when she wanted to use the kitchen. We were two people who happened to share an address and a mortgage and 22 years of history. That didn't mean much anymore. 3 days after my meeting with Saul, Linda came to the shop. I was under a Ford F-150, replacing a starter motor, when I heard heels clicking on the concrete. Not work boots, not sneakers. Heels, the kind that cost more than the starter motor I was installing. I rolled out from under the truck, and there she was, Linda, my wife, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably came from one of those stores where they offer you champagne while you shop. Her hair was different, highlighted, styled. She looked like she was about to close a real estate deal or accept an award for something important. She looked like someone I used to know. She stood near the entrance, trying not to touch anything. The shop was particularly honest that day. Smell of motor oil and old concrete, and that faint scent of rust that never quite goes away. There was a calendar on the wall from 1987, featuring a woman in a bikini draped over a Corvette. My toolbox was open, wrenches scattered on the workbench like a metal graveyard. The radio was playing Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the volume was just loud enough to make conversation difficult. I turned it down, asked her what she was doing here. She said we needed to talk. I wiped my hands on a rag and waited. Linda didn't come to the shop. In 22 years of marriage, she'd been here maybe 5 times. Twice to pick me up when my truck was in the shop itself. Once to tell me her father had died. Once to bring me lunch when I was working a double shift. Once on our anniversary, early in the marriage, when she thought surprising me at work was romantic. This wasn't romance. This was business. She reached into her purse, one of those designer bags with initials on it that cost more than my monthly insurance payment, and pulled out a folder, legal size, the kind that meant someone had spent money on a lawyer. She set it on my workbench, right next to a torque wrench and a pile of greasy shop rags. She told me it was a post-nuptial agreement. Said her lawyer had drawn it up. Said it was simple, clean, fair. I picked up the folder and opened it. The first page had a lot of words like whereas and heretofore, and other things lawyers used to make 3 sentences take 3 pages. But the important part was on page 2. Date of separation, January 1st. I looked at that date for a long time. January 1st. 6 months ago. 6 months before I bought a lottery ticket at a gas station on Route 47. 6 months before 6 numbers changed everything. I asked her why January 1st. Linda had her answer ready. She'd rehearsed this. I could tell by the way she stood, the way she held her hands, the slight tilt of her head that meant she was about to sell me something I didn't want. She said it was just a formality, nothing personal, just practical. She explained that she'd had some business expenses over the past 6 months, some investments, some financial movements that the IRS might have questions about. And if we had an official separation date, it would make everything cleaner, simpler, less complicated when tax season came around. She said she didn't want to get dragged into any problems with the IRS. Said this was actually protecting me, protecting both of us. All I had to do was agree that, technically, we'd been separated since January 1st. The paperwork would reflect that. The courts would accept it. Everyone would be happy. She made it sound like she was doing me a favor. I'm not a lawyer. But I'm not stupid either. You don't spend 40 years fixing machines without learning how things work. Cause and effect, action and reaction. Every decision has a consequence, and every consequence was planned by someone who wanted something. Linda wanted that January 1st date for a reason, And it wasn't to protect me from the IRS. She wanted to lock in that $40,000 she'd stolen. If our separation date was January 1st, then that money was hers. Separate property. She could tell a judge she'd earned it, saved it, invested it, whatever story she wanted to tell. And the judge would nod and sign the papers, and she'd walk away with money that came from our joint account, from our shared savings, from the retirement fund we were supposed to use together. But that wasn't all. There was more. I could see it in the way she watched me read the document, the way her fingers tapped against her designer purse, the nervous energy of someone who needed the signature more than she was letting on. The apartment, the one-bedroom place downtown with the exposed brick. If our separation date was January 1st, and she'd bought that place in March, then it was her property. Separate property. Mine wouldn't touch it. When the divorce went through, she'd keep it. She'd keep the condo and the $40,000 and whatever else she'd been hiding. And I'd keep the house with 4 years left on the mortgage and a shop full of tools that would never make me rich. She thought she was clever. She thought she was getting away with something. I put the folder down on the workbench and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. Tried to find a woman I'd married at a courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon because we couldn't afford a big wedding. Tried to find a woman who'd cried when her father died and held my hand at his funeral. Tried to find anything familiar in this stranger wearing expensive clothes and asking me to sign away half a year of my life with a date that meant nothing to her and everything to me. The radio played something by Tom Petty. The F-150 sat on the lift above us, its broken starter motor on my workbench, waiting to be replaced with something that worked. I asked her what I got out of this. She blinked, like the question surprised her, like she expected me to just sign it and go back to work, like I was supposed to be grateful she was making this easy. She said I got peace. No fighting. No drama. Clean break. We could both move on with our lives. I told her that wasn't enough. Her jaw tightened. Just a little. Just enough to show me that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. She'd expected the broken mechanic, the tired husband, the man who'd stopped fighting months ago. She asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted the shop, this building, the garage, my tools, my workspace. I wanted it in writing that this place was mine, that when everything was divided up and lawyers took their fees and we signed the final papers, this shop stayed with me. It wasn't worth much. The building was leased, not owned. The equipment was old. The whole operation probably appraised at less than her condo downtown. But it was mine. The only thing in my life that still made sense. Linda thought about it. I could see her doing the math. The shop versus everything else. The shop versus the apartment, and the $40,000 and whatever else she had planned. She said fine. The shop was mine. But I had to sign the agreement. Had to agree to the January 1st date. I picked up the folder again. Looked at that date. January 1st. 6 months before July 4th. 6 months before independence. If I signed this, the lottery ticket was separate property. Mine alone. Linda would walk away with her condo and her stolen money and her new life, and she'd never know she'd lost $42 million by being too greedy to wait. If I didn't sign it, she'd get suspicious. She'd start asking questions. She'd wonder why I wasn't jumping at the chance to end this marriage cleanly. And eventually, somehow, she'd find out about the ticket, about the trust, about everything. And then I'd lose half of $42 million to a woman who'd stolen $40,000 from me and lied about her dead mother. The choice wasn't really a choice. I asked her when we'd make it official. She said her lawyer could file the paperwork this week. Said we could meet at his office. Sign everything properly. Get it notarized. Make it legal. She pulled out her phone and checked her calendar, scrolling past appointments and reminders and a life I wasn't part of anymore. She said Thursday afternoon worked for her. 2:00. Her lawyer's office was downtown, near the courthouse. She asked if that worked for me. I nodded, told her Thursday was fine, told her I'd be there. She smiled, actually smiled, like we were making lunch plans, like this was normal, like signing a document that erased 6 months of our marriage was just another Tuesday afternoon errand between the dry cleaning and the grocery store. She picked up the folder and tucked it back into her designer purse, told me to dress nice. Said her lawyer ran a professional office. Then she turned and walked toward the door, her heels clicking on the concrete, echoing in the empty space of the shop. She stopped at the entrance, looked back at me. For a second, just a second, I thought maybe she'd change her mind. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd tell me the truth about the money and the apartment and whoever she'd been seeing. But she didn't. She just told me not to be late. Then she was gone. The door closed behind her. The shop was quiet except for the radio and the sound of my own breathing and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. I stood there for a long time. The folder was gone, but I could still see it in my mind. Page 2. Date of separation, January 1st. I thought about that lottery ticket. Hidden in a grease can where Linda would never look. Thought about $42 million and a wife who thought she'd outsmarted me. Thought about July 4th and independence and how sometimes freedom costs everything you have. The F-150 sat on the lift above me, waiting. The starter motor sat on my workbench, next to where Linda had placed her folder. Old parts and new papers, both of them designed to make something work that was already broken. I picked up my wrench and went back to work. Because that's what you do. You fix what's in front of you. You tighten the bolts. You make sure everything fits. And when you're done, you start the engine and hope it runs better than it did before. Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock, downtown. I'd be there, and I'd sign her papers. And she'd never know that her greed had just cost her $21 million. Thursday came like any other day. Sunny, 72 degrees. The kind of weather where people wash their cars and mow their lawns and pretend everything is fine. I wore the same clothes I wore to my father's funeral. Black pants that didn't quite fit anymore. A button-down shirt that was white 10 years ago and was now more of an ivory. A tie I'd borrowed from Saul because I didn't own one. Work boots because I didn't own dress shoes, and I wasn't about to buy a pair for this. Linda's lawyer's office was downtown, in one of those glass buildings that reflected the sky and made you feel small just looking at it. The lobby had marble floors and a fountain that served no purpose except to remind you that water could be expensive if you displayed it correctly. Everything echoed. Footsteps, voices, the quiet judgment of people in suits who'd never changed their own oil. I took the elevator to the 14th floor. The doors opened to reveal a waiting room that looked like a furniture showroom. Leather couches, abstract art that probably cost more than my truck. A receptionist behind a desk made it with so polished it looked wet. She asked if I had an appointment. I told her I was here to sign papers. Frank, 2 o'clock. She smiled the way people smile when they're paid to smile and asked me to have a seat. Said someone would be with me shortly. I sat on a leather couch that was more comfortable than my bed at home and waited. The receptionist typed something on her computer. A phone rang somewhere. Classical music played from hidden speakers. So quiet you almost couldn't hear it, but loud enough to make the silence feel intentional. Linda arrived 10 minutes later. She was with a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, expensive suit, hair that looked like it required maintenance. He had his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the door like she might get lost in a stray hallway. This was him. The reason for the secret bank account. The reason for the one-bedroom apartment downtown. The reason my marriage died 6 months before I found out about it. He was also her lawyer. That was bold. Stupid, but bold. Like juggling chainsaws. Sure, it's impressive, but eventually you're going to cut something off. Linda saw me sitting on the couch, and her smile faltered. Just for a second, like she'd forgotten I'd be here, even though she'd invited me. She recovered quickly. Introduced a man as Richard, her attorney. Said he'd be handling the paperwork today. Richard looked at me the way mechanics look at cars that aren't worth fixing. He didn't offer to shake my hand. We were led into a conference room with a table that could seat 12 people and windows that overlooked the city. I could see the courthouse from here. Could see the gas station where I bought coffee every morning. Could see the highway that led to my shop and my house, and the life I'd spent 40 years building. Richard sat at the head of the table. Linda sat to his right. I sat across from her, because that's where they pointed. The papers were already laid out. 3 copies. Black ink. Pages marked with little tabs that said "Sign here," in friendly letters, Like signing away 6 months of your life was as simple as returning a package. Richard explained the process. Said this was a postnuptial agreement establishing a legal separation date. Said once we signed, the date of January 1st would be recognized by the state as the official end of marital financial obligations. Said everything acquired after that date would be considered separate property. He said it would make the divorce simpler, cleaner, less expensive for everyone involved. He was very good at his job. Made it sound like a favor, like we were all adults making adult decisions, and wasn't it nice that everyone could be so reasonable? I looked at the papers. Same document Linda had shown me in the shop, but now in triplicate with more tabs. Page 2 still had the same date, January 1st. Richard asked if I had any questions. I asked where I signed. Linda shifted in her chair. Richard smiled. He liked easy clients, people who didn't argue, people who just wanted it over with. He pointed to the first tab, then the second, then the third. Said there'd be a notary coming in to make it official. The door opened and an older woman entered carrying a stamp and a leather portfolio. She introduced herself as a notary, said she was there to witness and certify the signatures. She had kind eyes and a grandmother's voice and probably had no idea she was watching someone lose $42 million. She asked if we were both entering into this agreement voluntarily, without coercion or duress. Linda said yes immediately, like she'd been waiting to say it, like she practiced. The notary turned to me. I looked at Linda, really looked at her, tried to find something worth saving, some memory worth holding on to, some reason to stop this before it finished. But all I saw was a stranger in expensive clothes, sitting next to a man who thought I was too stupid to notice his hand on her knee under the table. I said yes. The notary nodded. She asked us both to confirm that we agreed our marital and financial relationship had ended on January 1st of this year, that as of that date, all property and assets acquired would be considered separate, that we understood this agreement would be binding and enforceable in any future divorce proceedings. Linda answered first, said yes with a brightness in her voice that didn't belong in this room, like she was confirming a reservation at a restaurant she'd been wanting to try. The notary turned to me. The room was quiet. I could hear the clock on the wall, could hear Richard's expensive watch ticking, could hear Linda's breathing, could hear the city outside, 14 floors below, continuing without us. I thought about the lottery ticket, hidden in a grease can in my shop. Thought about July 4th, thought about independence, thought about how sometimes the best revenge is just letting people hang themselves with their own rope. I said yes. One word, single syllable, the easiest word in the English language. Yes. The notary smiled, said that was perfect, said we could proceed with the signatures. Richard handed me a pen. Heavy, expensive, the kind of pen that probably cost more than my first car. I signed my name on the first tab, then the second, then the third. The sound of the pen on paper was the sound of a door closing, or maybe opening. Hard to tell the difference, sometimes. Linda signed next. Her signature was different than I remembered. More flourishes, more confidence. She signed like someone who'd won something. The notary stamped each copy with a sound like a judge's gavel, declared the documents witnessed and certified, said we'd each receive a copy for our records, said congratulations like we just bought a house instead of dismantling one. Richard stood first, shook Linda's hand, told her he'd file the paperwork with the court tomorrow, said it should be processed within a week, said she could call him if she had any questions. He didn't shake my hand, didn't even look at me. I was already gone as far as he was concerned, already erased. Just another signature on a document he'd bill $600 an hour to prepare. Linda stood, smoothed her skirt, picked up her copy of the agreement, and held it like a diploma. She looked at me for the first time since we'd signed. She told me she hoped I'd manage okay. Said it without warmth, without concern, just words filling space. She told me to take care of myself. Said the shop would keep me busy. Said maybe being alone was what I needed. She told me goodbye with a voice that said good riddance. I stood up, tucked my copy of the agreement under my arm, looked at Linda and Richard standing together, already a unit, already past this moment. I told her goodbye, used her name, Linda, like she was someone I used to know. Then I left, walked out of the conference room, walked past the receptionist with her professional smile, walked past the fountain in the lobby with its expensive water, walked out into the Thursday afternoon sun, and breathed air that tasted like freedom. It had started to rain. One of those sudden summer storms that comes out of nowhere and soaks everything in minutes. I didn't have an umbrella. Didn't care. I stood on the sidewalk outside that glass building and let the rain hit my face and wash away whatever I was supposed to feel. I pulled out my phone, dialed Saul. He answered on the first ring. I told him it was time. He said he'd been waiting for my call, said the trust was ready, said he'd contact the lottery commission tomorrow, said we'd set up the claim process, said my name would never appear on any public documents. He asked how I was doing. I told him I was fine, better than fine. He told me to go home, get some rest, said the hard part was over, but he was wrong. The hard part was just beginning. For Linda, 1 month later, the news broke. I was in the shop rebuilding a transmission on a Dodge Charger when my phone started buzzing. Not one call, not 2, 10, 15, 20 text messages, voicemails, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I wiped my hands and checked. The first notification was from a local news site. Mystery lottery winner finally revealed. Trust connected to local mechanic. Journalists love a mystery, and $42 million is one hell of a mystery. They've been digging for a month, following paper trails, making calls, asking questions. Someone at the lottery commission must have talked. Someone at Saul's office must have mentioned something. However it happened, my name was out, not as the direct winner. Saul had done his job too well for that, but as the beneficiary of the trust that held the ticket, close enough for the vultures to circle. My phone kept buzzing. I ignored it, went back to work. The Charger's transmission was more interesting than whatever the internet had to say about me. Then Linda's call started. The first message was sweet. Saccharine, her voice doing that thing it used to do when she wanted something. She said she'd seen the news. Said she couldn't believe it. Said she was so happy for me. Said we needed to talk. Said we should meet. Said there were things we needed to discuss. She didn't mention the 42 million. Didn't need to. It was in every word, every pause, every breath. The third message was different. Less sweet, more desperate. She said she'd talked to a lawyer. Different lawyer. Not Richard. This one apparently told her things she didn't want to hear. She said we'd been married when I bought the ticket. Said she had rights. Said she deserved half. Said I couldn't do this to her. The 10th message was pure rage. She called me things I'd never heard her say. Things I didn't think she knew how to say. She said she'd see me in court. Said she'd take everything. Said I'd regret this. Said Richard had connections. Said I was finished. I listened to all of them. Sat on my porch. Drank a beer. Watched the sun go down. Deleted each message after it finished. The next morning, Linda's new lawyer filed an emergency motion. Claimed the lottery ticket was community property. Claimed I'd hidden assets. Claimed fraud. Claimed breach of fiduciary duty. Claimed every legal theory they could think of to get their hands on $21 million. Saul called me. Said not to worry. Said we had everything we needed. Said to remember January 1st. The hearing was 3 weeks later. Same courthouse I could see from Richard's office. Different floor. Different room. Different purpose. Linda was there with her new lawyer. Expensive suit. Expensive briefcase. Expensive words. He argued for 30 minutes. Showed the court our marriage certificate. Showed the date on the lottery ticket. Showed that we were legally married when I bought it. Therefore, community property. Therefore, she was entitled to half. He was very convincing. Made it sound simple. Logical. Fair. Then Saul stood up. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. He walked to the judge's bench and handed up a single document. Post-nuptial agreement. Signed by both parties. Notarized. Filed with the court. Date of separation, January 1st. Date of lottery ticket, July 4th. The math was simple. Even a judge could do it. 6 months. The ticket was purchased 6 months after we legally separated. 6 months after our marital property rights had ended. Separate property. Mine alone. I watched Linda's face as the judge read the document. Watched her lawyer's face as he realized what had happened. Watched Richard, sitting in the gallery, as he understood what he'd helped her do. She'd played herself. In her greed to protect the $40,000 she'd stolen, in her rush to secure the apartment she bought with my money, in her eagerness to erase 6 months of our marriage so she could run off with her lawyer boyfriend, she'd sign away the biggest payday either of us would ever see. The judge asked Linda's lawyer if he had anything else. He didn't. The judge ruled in my favor, dismissed the motion, said the lottery ticket was my separate property, said Linda had no claim, said the post-nuptial agreement was clear and binding, said case closed. Linda tried to say something, tried to argue. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, told her to stop, told her it was over. She looked at me across the courtroom. I met her eyes, didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at her the way I looked at broken engines that weren't worth fixing. Then I left, walked out of that courthouse, walked into the parking lot, got in my truck, and drove away. I heard later that things went bad for Linda, fast and hard. The IRS got interested in her story about January 1st, started asking questions about her finances, about that $40,000, about where it came from, about why she'd been so insistent on that particular separation date. Turns out lying to protect stolen money is still lying, and the IRS doesn't like lying. Richard stopped taking her calls, stopped returning her messages. Turns out lawyers don't like clients who cost them $42 million. She had to sell the apartment to pay for her legal bills, had to move back into a place she could actually afford, had to start over with nothing except the knowledge that her own greed had destroyed her. As for me, I bought a new shop, bigger, better, not downtown, nothing fancy, just a place where I could work without a landlord breathing down my neck. And I bought some cars, not Ferraris, not Lamborghinis, nothing that screamed money or begged for attention. I bought the cars I dreamed about since I was 16. American muscle, cars with history, with soul, a 67 Shelby, a 70 Chevelle, a 69 Roadrunner, cars that were built when men knew how to build things that lasted. Today I'm in the new shop. It's bigger than the old place, but it smells the same. Motor oil, old leather, honest work. The Shelby is on the lift. I'm replacing the exhaust system, original parts. Nothing aftermarket, nothing fake. The radio plays Creedence Clearwater Revival. Same station, same songs. Some things don't need to change. My phone sits on the workbench, silent. No more calls from Linda. No more messages. No more demands. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like peace. I climb into the Shelby. Turn the key. The engine catches. Roars. 428 cubic inches of American fury. The sound shakes the walls, rattles the windows, makes everything else disappear. I sit there, listen to the engine, feel the vibration through the steering wheel. The Shelby idles rough, aggressive, angry, perfect. Linda wanted to steal my past, wanted to erase everything we'd built, wanted to take the money and the memories and leave me with nothing but an empty house and a mortgage I couldn't afford. But all she did was give me my future. She thought she was clever, thought she was getting away with something, thought that January 1st date was her ticket to freedom. Turns out it was mine. I rev the engine. The Shelby responds like it's been waiting 40 years for this moment, like it knows what it means to be free, like it understands that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well. Sometimes it's just being exactly who you always were. Sometimes it's just the sound of an engine that doesn't lie. The Shelby idles. I breathe. The shop is quiet except for the rumble of 400 horses waiting for permission to run. I put it in gear, and I drive.